So in this video what we're going to do is take a look at fixing the skinning of our character. So what I'm going to do is, I usually just kind of give them a little exercise animation. So I'm going to select all my NURB circles, and notice how I unchecked joins and mesh. And I'm going to set a key on 1, and then another key on 10, just to kind of lock that position. Okay, so let's go up to 16, and the increments don't really matter. We're just testing our rig. And I'm going to rotate this down. Again, I'm just sort of looking at the way my rig looks, and maybe I'll pull these down as well, kind of soften his shoulders. And I'll rotate these forward. Again, I'm looking for things like this where maybe I want it to have a little bit harder of a squash in his elbow. Okay. And let's pull these down. So again, I sort of look at this position, and so that's 16. So we kind of got him doing this little, okay, and then maybe on 10 I want him, or on 20 I want him to return. So I'm going to middle mouse click and go to 20 and set a key. Okay. Actually, let's go ahead and select all of these NURB circles, middle mouse, then go to 20. So he does that. Let's go to 26. And literally, I'm just going to select this first foot, move it up, and like that. Notice how I get a lot of distortion in the hip. So that's good. We want to that we caught that. So let's go to 20, and let's go to 32 and set a key. So we test that foot. Select this foot and do the same. And I'm going to set a key on 32 here, and I'm going to go to 40 and just move that foot up. Now if you do get that where the rig breaks, it's usually due to, for example, your pull vector handle needs to be pulled out more. So you can see, you can pretty much push these rigs as far as you want. Alright, so that's a pretty good way of testing for now. So when I pull him down, you can see I get a little bit of distortion in the book bag, and I really want his root to be sort of, his shirt to be straight on. I don't want it affected that much by his hips. So let's start with looking at how the heck do we fix this book bag. So I'm going to go to front view, where I'm going to actually select my mesh at this point and uncheck my NURB circles. I'm going to select the book bag and go to face mode and double click the entire book bag. Then I'm going to go to Window, General Editors, Component Editor. The Component Editor, what that'll do is it'll tell you what bone is controlling what vertice. So if we go to Smooth Skins, or I'm sorry, Smooth Skin, you see there's no vertices. So I'm just going to Shift right click, or I'm sorry, Control right click, and go to vertices, and it selects all of the vertices in that bag. And you can see that the clavicle, the jaw, all of these different bones, the neck, are all controlling this book bag. I mean, on both sides. So you can see that these are all the different verts. Really, all I really want is his spine controlling this book bag. Okay? So, and we can always add influences later. So just for now, to kind of clean up my model, I'm going to go ahead and select all the spine verts, and I'm just going to type a 1 in there. You can see that the shape kind of snapped into place there. Now, the rest of these, I'm just going to sort of highlight all of them. Let's kind of maximize this so you can see it a little bit better. If you go from the top all the way to the bottom, and you type a 1 in there, and you hit enter, it'll be weighted 100%. But you can share weighting between vertices. So the way to release that weighting is to go into the different parts and just hit 0. And what you'll notice is they delete from our list here. So for example, I don't want the clavicle, I don't want the shoulder. And as I do that, you'll start to see the book bag start to remain shape. So I don't want the shoulder controlling it. I don't want the neck. I really just want it to sit on the spine. And if you notice with kids, their book bags sort of flail all over the place. They're kind of, they don't sort of move to the shape of the body. They really are just kind of sitting against their back. So we don't want the root to have any weighting either. And again, I'm just typing 0 here and hitting enter. You can see that looks a little bit better. So, and we're going to go ahead and just leave it all in spine 01 for now. I'm going to go back to object mode. And again, I'm going to go to face mode, double click this, shift right click, or I'm sorry, control right click to vertices, and do the same thing in here. Control right click to vertices. Oops, looks like I deleted this shoulder. Let's go back. To vertices. So we want these weighted to spine, and you can notice in this particular instance it didn't weight it at all to spine. So we have to actually add spine in there. And the way we do that is we go to skin, edit smooth skin, and we have to add our paint skin weights tool. So I'm going to hold Control Shift and just add that here. Now when I double click that, what paint skin weights does is it allows you to, let me go ahead and go to object mode so you can sort of see the whole thing. It allows you to sort of paint the control onto it. I personally like to just play with the component editor, but there are times when you have to come in there and add weighting. For example, like the spine wasn't on the ruler and the calculator, so I have to kind of come in here and I have to give that a little bit of weighting. So there's two ways of doing that. You can go to alphabetical. So for example, we can go up to spine 1. We can find that in our list here. And you'll notice that none of these little objects have any control over spine 1. So what you can do is with your brush you can sort of go ahead and paint all these different elements. See how I'm kind of painting the calculator. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of this method, but it seems to work pretty good. What I like to do is I'll actually go to face mode, double click the calculator, all these different elements, and just so I know that they all have influence from the spine, I control right click, go to 2 vertices. So now I know the vertices for all of the book bag is selected. Then open my paint skin weights tool, and this is all affected. And I find my spine 1 in here, which is here. And what I can do is I can set the opacity, and that's the strength of this brush, to 0.1, and I can just sort of flood all of these elements, and it'll add 1 to all those elements. See how the book base starts to sort of, again, conform itself to spine 1. Okay, I'm going to fix up a few of the other areas to sort of show you that in this tutorial, sort of show you all of that, and then I'll that'll be sort of the end of this video on how to skin your model. So let's take a look at areas like around his hips and his butt. So for example, notice I have a lot of torque here. So again, same thing. I'm just going to go to edge mode, double click this edge, this edge that kind of goes around here, so you can see a little bit better. And then I'm going to go to I'm going to go ahead and open my component editor. I should have went to Control Shift and added it here. So now I have it here. And I'm going to go to Smooth Skins, Control right click, go to 2 vertices, and I just want to weight this 100%. Oops. Let's go ahead back to here. Let's find our root and weight it 100%. Whenever you zero it out, it kind of ruins the. And again, I want to weight that 100% to the root. Alright, so now when we go to our component editor, you can see here, when we go back, it'll update. We can make this a 1, and we can zero these guys out. So now you can see that it snaps. It's nice and clean. Same thing in here. Okay, and so we're going to sort of look at this other area here. So another thing we can do is sort of a way of using our paint weights tool is you can kind of average out these verts and sort of look at where they go. So you can see here that it's currently being shared between the right hip and the root. I don't want the right hip controlling this vert. I want the left hip to control it, so I'm going to go ahead and zero this out. And then what you can do is just sort of play with these values. So I can say, okay, if I select this vert, I want it to be higher. I don't want it to sort of ride this low, the shirt. So let's see, what happens if I type in 0.6 here? Oh, it goes up. Okay, let's do 0.9. Okay, well let's give this 0.1, so that's less of a value. So you're like, oh, that looks a little bit better. So you can kind of go through that way as well. So again, 0.9 looks good for that one, and 0.1. Okay, now again with this, we don't want our shirt to ride up like that. We want it to sort of sit against his leg. So again, his root should be at almost 0.9. His R hip, his right hip, should not have any control over it. And his left hip should have less control. So at least we get a nice curve. Same thing in here. Again, I'm going to give the root a little bit more control there. I don't want his right hip having any control, but I want his left hip to have a little bit of control. Okay, and so you can kind of find these values. Okay, now I want to point out one other aspect, sort of a trick I always do for rigging when it comes to knees and legs. So whenever you're modeling a character, you usually have your joint always sits on an edge. Now this edge, so if we kind of zoom in here, should always be weighted 50% between both joints. So for example, if I go to this edge here, let's sort of see where the bending of the arm is. Alright, so you can see right now this edge is not weighted 50-50. So I'm going to go ahead and go to object mode, select this edge. So I'm going to double click it, shift right click, control right click, go to two vertices. Let's just open up our component editor and see exactly how this is weighted. We've got him up here. Okay, we have his shoulder, we have his wrist, we have his elbow, we have his clavicle. We don't want any of that. We want his elbow, we want it between his elbow and his shoulder. So let's go ahead and uncheck his wrist here. Let's give that no weighting. And let's give his clavicle 0 weighting as well. And let's just make each one of these guys 0.5 and 0.5. So now they're for a total of 100%. So now it's weighted directly 50-50. Okay? Now, the edges that are directly next to this edge, so let's go back to object mode, should be weighted 75% to the shoulder or the nearest bone, and 25% to the next bone over. So for example, left shoulder should be 0.75 here. Okay, so we still get a nice curvature. And left clavicle should be 0. We don't want any weighting. And left elbow should be 0.25. So that equates to 100%. And so that's going to give you, you can notice here, a nice curvature. Now, if you have a fold in there that you don't like, which usually happens at a bend like this, depending on the way your shirt is, you can easily go in here and select these vertices here and use your paint weights tool to sort of go between each one of those. Or you can use your component editor. It's really up to your preference. So, for example, as he bends, he's getting a little bit more pull on the inside to the left shoulder. So let's give the left elbow, just for these few in the front, let's go ahead and make that 0.6. And you see how it's it's 110% total, so we want to make sure that we're always trying to stay around 100%. So that's 0.4. So you can see that we want to actually have the shoulder have a little more weighting to push it forward. So let's reverse those values to 0.6 and 0.4. So again, you're just testing that pull, and now we get a really nice curvature in the shirt, a nice curve coming this way. And as that arm bends, it squishes against his skin. Sort of see that nice little squish, and we get a nice curvature in the arm. Okay, so you can pretty much practice just those tools, and you can get a nice little bend in the leg. So same thing here. You want to fix the butt and all the other stuff. But if we look at this leg and we look at that, you can see that this leg hasn't been adjusted. So something we can do is select the entire mesh, go to skeleton, skin, and then go to edit smooth skin and turn on mirror skin weights. Okay, so with that option open, let's go ahead and just sort of look at the way this kind of works. So I'm just going to move this leg up and forward so you can kind of see. Actually, you know what we should do? Let me place this at the exact same location as this, and I'm going to pull this up and in and down. So right now you can tell they're about the same positioning, but the skinning is not the same because we only really fixed one side. So what we want to do is we want to do Y and Z. So you see how YZ sort of cuts the character in half? And we're going to go positive to negative. And so when we hit apply, look what happens to the other side. You hit apply a few times, and it does its best to mirror that skin weighting across the surface. And in my particular case, it did a fantastic job. So at this point now, when we go to bend these arms, you could see even in here, it did a great job of mirroring that skin weight onto the other side.